Welcome to the Delvin Cox Experience, the podcast in which each week I'm on a one-man mission to unite our culture through diversity. I'm your host, Delvin Cox, and this week on the podcast I have a special guest. Let them know who you are, brother.
My name is Greg Marinelli. I'm a podcaster, and I'm half of the podcast, Pilate Said podcast.
Okay, we're gonna get into that right after we do the 5 for 5. You know the 5 for 5, 5 questions, 5 answers to get the ball rolling. Greg, are you ready?
I am ready and excited.
Yeah, everybody gets nervous about this. I don't know why they get nervous about this part.
I've been thinking of questions and answers about this. This has made me want to do these things. I'm like, I want to ask people questions. So it's been fun.
Definitely. All right. Question number 1. What is the best album or song you listened to in the past year? And it doesn't have to be new.
Okay. Can I break this into 2 categories?
Of course you can.
Oh, thank you. See, I like 2 kinds of music. I like what's called post-hardcore, and then my band that I am become a fanatic about is Thrice, and their album is Sea Change. The other band that I love and the style I like is rap, and I'm a big NF fan. And his The Search CD that he put out, album he put out, it's phenomenal, and I'm wearing that out too.
Okay, that's dope. All right, cool. Question number 2. What's your favorite book to read?
Well, as I think I mentioned when we were talking via Twitter, I'm a pastor, so I have to say the Bible because that's the one I read the most.
That's cheating.
That is really cheating. It is cheating. And I was like, I was worried you were going to ask that question because it feels like it's just such a. It has to be the answer. But I really, really, really liked Lord of the Rings, all 3 of them. Those were my favorite books all growing up. I loved the movies, loved the books. So I'd have to say them. If you were going to force me to say one that wasn't the Bible, they were my favorites.
Well, the Bible counts as an answer. The Bible's a good answer, actually. I'm not going to browbeat you for picking the Bible at all.
That's kind of weird, actually. Now I think about it, but you know, I didn't want to. Yeah. There you go.
How dare you love Jesus? Absurd.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
Question number 3. This is everybody's favorite question. What's the dumbest thing you've done as a kid?
You know, I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and you've asked a lot of people that question. Yeah. And I've noticed that a lot of people, their answers are on the verge of incriminating, but they're all cool. They're so cool. I listen and I'm like, oh, I want to be that person. That sounds really cool. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to be the uncoolest person. I'm going to tell the dumbest thing I've ever did. When I was a kid, my parents would get bananas, and they were Chiquita bananas, and had that Mexican Latina lady on there with her.
Exactly what you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I married a Mexican. I must have a Mexican thing back then. I like my Latinas, and I think it was 3. I took 2 of those little stickers, and I stuck those stickers right over my nipples, my chichis, as the Mexicans would call them. And I thought I'd be like her. Well, that's a very sensitive part of your body.
Yes, it is.
We couldn't get them off. I had to soak in a bathtub for hours for them to get those stinking things off. It hurt. It was my mom. So that was the dumbest thing and the most embarrassing thing I could think of that would be, not incriminating and not cool. So there you go.
Yeah, I have several questions about this.
I'm sure you do. I'll try to remember them if I can.
What was your mom's response to seeing her son put these basically pastries on his nipples?
You know, the truth of the matter is, if you know me and if you know my mom, she probably wasn't that shocked. Because I was a kid that you just never knew what I was going to do. Plus, I'm kind of an entertainer, and that was my way of entertaining. So that makes sense. She probably wasn't shocked at all. To my shame. Plus, there was incriminating things of that same entertainment later on that she, had to deal with all her life and still deals with.
Question number 4. Give me your top 5 favorite things to do in your pastime.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I have daughters,
Okay.
And kids are, a lot. One of my pet peeves is people don't tell you how much fun kids are.
That is true.
They're so much fun to play with, just, wrestling around or watching something with them or reading a book to them. I gotta tell you, that's been a new joy in my life, and I'm really having a blast. I love a good movie.
Okay.
Movies. I like video games. I like playing video games with other people.
Okay, that's good.
Let's see. So that's 3. Mention that I'm a preacher.
Yes.
I love studying and preparing and preaching. It's probably one of my favorite pastimes. I love the preparation. I mean, it's kind of like, preparing for a podcast, but a little different. You got a big audience in front of you, and that's a blast. I love that. You know what? Last but not least, I love riding motorcycles. Love the feel of the air. We're both in Florida. There's no time of the year that we can't ride a motorcycle. It's fantastic.
Very true. That is very true. Definitely. I like motorcycles too myself.
Okay. Awesome.
Question 5. This is going to be the fun one. Zombie apocalypse is happening. You can only take 5 things with you.
Okay.
Family doesn't count, obviously. They're going to come walk in the car or whatever they got to get. What are you taking with you?
Obviously.
I already know one is going to be the Bible.
You're right. But I want to define that a little bit. But my first one, I was thinking about this kind of jokingly, but it's true. I want to take my toothbrush. And here's the reason why. You ever noticed on all the zombie movies, the zombies, their teeth is horrible. Their teeth are horrible. If you brush your teeth, you just smile, then they know you're not a zombie. It's a great way of defining who you are. Another thing is I want to take a gun. I've heard a bunch of people on your podcast say gun, but one of the things I noticed is most of them don't seem to know what gun is a gun. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I was thinking, what gun do I want to take? I want to take my 12 gauge. I want to take because one, I can find ammo for that everywhere. It's something that I can hunt and eat with, and also it's a good crowd pleaser. It'll keep people away when it'll keep people away without you actually having to pull a trigger. I want a tool. I want a tool that I can build things with. What I do to put bread on my table is I build houses. So I want an axe because I can turn wood into tree houses or anything like that, and I'd be up in the trees, and then I don't have to worry about the zombies at night. And on that note, I want some rope so that I can tie, because it's hard to make rope. So I want to bring some rope with me. And then last, I do want to bring a Bible, but you know what? I want to bring a Bible for 2 reasons. If you got nothing, if everything's shut down, you're going to need entertainment. And there's great stories in the Bible, so it's great entertainment, but also it helps you recreate the culture that we're in. Because every zombie movie, the zombies become a problem, and then the humanity becomes the bigger problem. Yes. And I think that, if nothing else, it'll give me a way of helping people recreate our culture. We have, in the United States, a Judeo-Christian culture, whether we know it or not, and we need to create that again. And if nothing else, if I have nothing else to do, I'll start going across the United States and take it to California, like in the Book of Eli, and so I'll have a purpose. So I like having a purpose.
That's a great movie, by the way. I love the Book of Eli.
Yeah, me too. That's a great book. Movie. It was a great movie.
But I think that's a good idea, and I think you're absolutely right about the Bible. The Bible has some very entertaining and great stories into it that are crazy.
Yeah.
Like I've always said that if you really look, if you want to get some great stories to make movies out of, yes. Look at the Bible. Look at the Bible. If you take some of those stories and adapt them to modern day, they will be awesome films.
And they would also be rated R, if not NC-17 or whatever, because they're not pretty.
Yes.
I mean, people always hear about David and Goliath. They hear that he hit him with the stone and knocked him down. They forget the rest of the story. He took Goliath's own sword and hacked his head off, and then took his head as a trophy.
Yes. Very brutal.
That's brutal. That's something I want to see in a movie, And you don't and it's there's some great movies, great stories. I love them.
I agree completely with that. I think that Hollywood hasn't done those stories justice.
No,
that they could do. I think that's a well that could be tapped that would bring people out to see excellent movies and films.
But here's the problem. Have you noticed that movies have two parts to them? They have the story that's very good and enjoyable, but then they also have something that someone's trying to tell you in the movie.
Yes.
And if Hollywood has a movie or a book or story that they can't manipulate to tell what they want to say, it's less desirable to give. Like real stories, they have a hard time doing real stories because it's harder to say what you want to say out of that real story, because it already is there. You know what I'm saying? What the end result of it. And I've noticed that a lot of times they have to manipulate the real stories. So they would do it with the Bible stories too, which would upset me. I mentioned that in books that I like the Lord of the Rings. I also like C.S. Lewis, and I thought that no, it wasn't the Lord. It was The Hobbit. The movie The Hobbit went away from the book. That bothered me. It did. It bothered me so much, dude. I couldn't stand it. And the Lord of the Rings stuck with the book, and I liked them. But I could see them trying to do a story about David and Goliath, and before David runs down and kills him, they have like a love affair or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You're like, no, don't do that. Yeah. Come on, that would be like, I could just see them totally ruining the story.
Yeah. You're probably right. They probably would botch it up.
Yeah, they would.
So let everybody know a little bit about yourself. For one, you're a pastor. Let us know a little bit about that. How long have you been a pastor for?
Oh, I've been a pastor, I think it's been 10, 15 years. I got to think here. It's probably 12 years. 12 years. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think talking to you right now, and even before you said it, and even that you're saying that now, the good thing about that is that when you hear people say they're a pastor, people, we got to straighten up. Yeah. But scary. You are completely down to earth, and I think that is a good thing.
Yeah. I try to portray being relaxed and you be you around me, because I don't want you to be fake. I found a lot. I also said I do construction, and when I tell people I do construction, it's kind of funny. People, they force themselves to cuss because they think, he's a contractor. He's got to have cussing in his language, right?
I was going to say that too.
and it's funny because to me, look, I don't mind when people cuss, but don't do it just for me. I don't want to hear it for me, right? And then they hear that I'm a pastor, so then they start talking about Jesus. And it's just for me. And I'm like, look, don't do either of this. Be what you are, and then we'll talk. I just want you to be real. And I found if I'm real around others, they usually I'm real around me. And I found that you've done that in your podcast. I've been listening, and you seem to be very real, and you create a real atmosphere. And that's enjoyable.
One of the things I've always kind of tried to preach is let people come on the podcast and be themselves and not judge them for being themselves, because a lot of times you hear these shows and things like that, people kind of put out their own opinions, and this podcast is not about me.
Yeah,
it's about the people I interview.
You have done a fantastic job on that. The ones I've listened.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that.
And not only have you done a good job on getting the people to talk, but you've done a good job on getting them to talk about the right things and directing the conversation. You've done. I admire your abilities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me ask you about that, because you're kind of in the business of that in terms of a pastor, of leading people down the right path. So what is that like to have kind of that pressure on you to do that? Because being a pastor has to be stressful in terms of it's like you have to set this high. People set these high standards for pastors, and I say this all the time about. I've said it multiple times to people that at the end of the day, a pastor is just a regular guy.
Yeah.
You can't put all this kind of pressure on them. They're gonna make mistakes, but how is it to deal with that kind of pressure and stress? But they're like, you always have to be above everybody in terms of he can never make a mistake. He can never make sins or things like that. What's that like?
Well, first off, when you're a pastor, you know everything about everyone because everyone feels comfortable telling you things. So I don't get accused of things too often, at least in my congregation, because I know enough about them. They're not going to do that to me. But also, okay, I believe the Bible says for all have sinned, right? So I need to be honest and say, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And I get up in front of the people all the time and say, I'm not perfect. As far as trying to get them to go the direction, it's not the direction I want them to go, or just a good direction. It's where I believe God wants them to go. Yes. Is me just getting up there and telling them what he says, reading his word and talking about that. And, yeah, I do get loud sometimes, but I try not to, if I point, I try not to point at people because I don't want to be too hard on people because that never helps. And then the other thing is doing one-on-one situations, 99% of the time, people know the answers. Yeah, I've said it so many times. You know what you're supposed to do. Do it. It's just do I tell you? How about this? I've done this times when I'm talking to someone. It's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, what would you tell me? And then they tell me, and I'm like, okay, do it. You know what you're supposed to do. And so that's how I've noticed. It's the stresses of it are being honest enough, but also you don't want to throw your dirty laundry outside, and also there's that I hold myself to a high standard. There's things that I won't allow myself to do that I don't really wrong with. I need to be careful. Just as if I do something small, someone to the fullest extent. I saw, brother on that, and I'm going to do it. And then they go too far, and I try not to do that.
Hold on. I'm gonna cut off the cameras because you're breaking up a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
So I don't want us to break up. So I'm gonna cut off your camera too, so that way neither one of us break up.
Okay.
Because I think what you're saying is important. I definitely don't want to miss out on that.
The camera's off.
Yeah, so I can hear you a little better now.
Okay, good. I'm sorry.
No, it's not on you at all. I think this internet is going. Both our internet is going crazy. But you're saying I like what you're saying in terms of how you kind of let people figure out themselves everything.
One of the things that bothers me, and it's hard to talk to people about God in the United States because so many people in the United States think they already got it all figured out. Partly because a lot of them do, in the sense that they've heard the story. They know about Jesus. They know, about the basics of the Bible, and they've already come to a conclusion. Most of the time, they have a twisted version of it, but it's not. But they have a thought on it, and that's harder than if you talk to someone that's never heard the name Jesus or heard of the Bible before. And with that note is that a lot of people have a concept of what the Bible is telling them to do and things that they can, you can help them, guide them on that and help them know what they're supposed to do in decision making.
So let me ask you this. Why is it so difficult to preach the word of God in today's climate? Because it seems like people are not willing to always hear it and be receptive to it. People rather just believe that, okay, if I die, I'm just going to be dead. They believe that, hey, there's the afterlife can be beautiful if you follow the word of God.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think there's two things that are becoming very pervasive. One is what some people call is the new atheist movement, which is the original atheist movement basically was an agnostic movement where they believed that you can't know that there's a God. The new atheist movement believes that the belief in God is a detriment to society. Sam Harris. There's four of them, and Sam Harris is the one that I've listened to. He sounds very. He's not mean in it. He's very cordial. I wouldn't mind having a conversation with him, but that movement has made a lot of people think that in order to be a Bible believer or a Christian, you must deny science and things that they claim to be 100% true. And well, that's not true. One thing, I think a lot of times on a lot of categories, I'm very perturbed with people that always want to say science is settled in so many categories, because science is there to figure out things, and it does not confirm things well. My favorite illustration when people say Christianity can't be true because science denies it somehow, I say, are eggs good for you? Because eggs were bad for you, then they were good for you, then the white was good for you, then the yolk was good for you, and then eggs were bad for you. And I think that science is not as settled as some would like it to be. So that's one reason. The other reason is people deny there being absolute truth. I'm trying to think. Well, the best illustration of that, and I don't want to get into a big topic on this, but when you say that there is no absolute truth of gender, which is becoming more and more fluent, the reason why that's happening is because we're trying to deny anything that can be seen. And my name is Greg, therefore I'm not Delvin. There's a difference between I and you, but now we're saying everything's murky, and that is why I think people don't like you saying, yeah, there is absolute truth. I think that's the biggest thing that people get upset about nowadays.
Well, see, you touched on two different things I want to talk about, but let's get to the first one first.
Okay.
Why do you think there's this divide between science and Christianity? Because the way I've always looked at it is that it can go hand in hand. Like,
I fully agree.
I think that just because science exists doesn't mean Christianity doesn't exist.
No. Well, I think one of the interesting things, going back to, we were talking about the Book of Eli, the movie.
Yes.
Someone wanted to grab the Bible because he knew it was a weapon, right? He knew that you could use the Bible as a weapon. I think that some people use science as a weapon. And so therefore they will try to find facts to disprove the existence of God, which, by the way, is absolutely impossible. You cannot have a universal negative. But the thing is that I think that that's the biggest reason why, is because some, not all, there's so many scientists out there that are Bible believing Christians. I mean, there's so many parts of science were created because when you think, as I do, that creation is a showing of what God has done, and therefore showing what God's like, it prods you to want to know more about it, not less. But some people have used it as a weapon to try to say you have to disbelieve in God in order to believe in science, and that's not true. It's just someone used it as a weapon. That's it. That's how I view it. Yeah.
I think you're right, and I appreciate that you've given some clarity on that in terms of how, like I said, the whole narrative has always been that, Christian people don't believe in science. If you're a Christian, you can't believe in science. Or if you're a scientist, you can't believe in Christianity. I'm like, how is that a thing? And look back in history. So many people that say things like that are such history deniers, because if you look back in history, the majority of scientists are Bible believers, because, like I said, the study of creation, as I look at it, is trying to understand the Creator. So therefore, it prods you to study it more. And I believe, you can go and look at some things that I've done, some houses I've built and stuff like that, and you can say, wow, Greg Scott does this. Or look at your podcast and know what kind of person you are.
Well, therefore, I should be able to look at creation and figure out things about God. That makes me want to study more and look at the earth more. And some scientists are definitely prodded by that, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. So let me ask you about this, because you just touched on the second point. This whole thing now that's going on with people wanting to be genderless and things like that. What is your take on that? How you see it?
I think it really comes down to the same thing of not wanting to have absolute truth. You're a man, therefore you're not a woman. And, it's just a fact. I'm sorry, and what happens is when we stop seeing things that are black and white, just true, 2 + 2 = 4, it makes things so much harder to be able to define things. I mean, it's not going to just be, look, we think the transgender thing is confusing. Wait until we get to trans species or trans racist. You know what I'm saying? When things that we're like, no, that can't be. And yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen very soon. So, and I said that years ago. I said, look, I'm seeing things. I think what's going to happen is people are going to say that there's no difference between men and women, and now we're having that. And when you look at it and you look at the logical conclusion of these things, they should be the way of us knowing how wrong they are. Like women's sports. If you are having men that are saying they're women and then going into the women's sports and dominating, that's not fair. It's not right. It's not logical. What was that? The British rapper Zuby, the guy that to just kind of as a joke, but he created a Twitter storm. He said he was a woman and then broke all the women's records on weightlifting. Just well, that's not right. It's not. He's not a woman, and we shouldn't. And he was doing it as a joke, but that's where we're at. It does. There's got to be some absolute truth, and I'm sorry. And then there is people that do have issues. Something inside of them is saying that there's something wrong. I've heard someone say that that they believed that the plants were talking to them. Well, if the person believes the plants were talking to them, we're not all supposed to say, okay, well, what are the plants saying? We're supposed to help the person not see that, help them realize that there is truth. And I don't mean to be mean. It's my heart breaks for people that have a struggle of that nature, but that doesn't mean we're supposed to all disbelieve that there's a reality. One last note on that. The whole reason why I named the podcast that I do Pilate Said is because what Pilate said is what is truth. And what we're trying to aim for is to just try to get down to some basic truths, because I think people are starting to deny truth too much.
I can agree with that aspect of it. I think that people kind of are making up their own truths.
Yeah. But see, you can't do that, because my truth and your truth, there's got to be a truth. I'm sorry. And you know what? And that means if you say 2 + 2 = 4 and I say 2 + 2 = 3, one of us has to be wrong. And that stinks, but that's still, in order to believe in a truth, you have to also believe that others are lies, others are falsehoods. And that's not easy, but that is reality.
Yeah. Okay. Getting back into this topic we were just talking about. How difficult is it moving in this climate and being a pastor when one of the main things that Christianity teaches is acceptance? And you have situations where the transgender community don't feel accepted because they're different.
Okay. Well,
so how do we bridge this gap to stop these situations from happening, where you have people who may be gay or transgender that want to go towards Christianity, but they don't because they don't feel accepted?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. My mom used to say this to me. I would do something wrong and she would say, Greg, I love you, but I don't love what you just did. Just because I accept a person and love a person doesn't mean I agree with what they're doing. That goes back to there being a truth. Just because, I've just met you, but if you said, hey man, 2 + 2 = 3, I'm going to say, no, dude, you're wrong. I like you. You seem to be a great guy, but you're wrong. And just because I'm accepting you doesn't mean I have to agree with you. And so, and I've had friends that are gay. I've had friends that disagree with me. I've had friends that are not Christians, that are atheists, that are I wouldn't say a new atheist because then they wouldn't want to be friends with me. But I've had friends that disagree with me, and do now. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to say that they're right. I'm just going to say, hey, I disagree with you. That doesn't mean I dislike you. That just means I disagree with you. By the way, I think that's a big problem right now. That's another huge problem right now is people are not willing to be friends with people they disagree. They think that for me to be nice to you is for me to always agree with you. That's not true. I'm supposed to be able to say, I don't agree with you, but I still like you.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I have, as you know, I have plenty of friends that I don't agree with on everything, but we're still friends.
Yeah,
because of that bond.
I've heard some podcasts where you had 2 groups of people who disagreed with each other, and you did fantastic on showing acceptance to both of them, even though obviously you couldn't agree with everyone because there was opposite of views going on in front of you. And I think that is exactly what's missing nowadays. I really do. I think that there's no way we can get to figure out what's true when we're not willing to talk to people and actually say, I disagree with you.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with disagreeing with somebody. Yeah. I think it's important to have these type of conversations as long as they're constructive and we're learning from each other. And I like the fact that the guys you just mentioned, they're now, I think they did it last week. They did the podcast together without me, just having fun.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah. So
that's fantastic.
I think that's amazing that I was able to get 2 groups together from 2 different political spaces and 2 different climates in the United States. One group from Detroit, one group from Texas, and they can build a friendship, even though they disagree on certain things. And I think that's very important for people to do.
I think that is the missing link of what's going on right now in our country completely. I heard someone say that back when my parents were young, baby boomer or late baby boomer, I guess, people would not say what political party they are. Nowadays, everyone says what political party they are, and they almost don't want to talk to anyone that's not part of that party. And people are becoming more and more cliquish, and that's not good. And then they get on Twitter or Facebook or whatever other social media, and they only hang with people of their own clique, and they have no idea what the other view is. It's amazing, and that's not right. It's not gonna. We're definitely not going to be able to. I think that's another whole reason why it's hard to get the gospel out there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's important to learn both sides of a situation because that's how you grow. Mm-hmm. It's important to learn why A and B happen to get to C.
Yes.
And if we don't know those things, we can't correct mistakes that are happening.
Yeah. Yeah. The true people that truly, you mentioned that Christianity preaches and teaches acceptance. And we believe that we're supposed to love everyone. Love your neighbor, and the neighbor is supposed to be everyone, not just on your street, but I think everyone around. The true Christians, the true people that truly believe that, you will see them actually love people that they cannot stand their viewpoints. They really are opposed to it, but they will show love to them. Those are the ones that are actually doing the right thing. But the problem is that nowadays that's that's not considered acceptable. But you will see those come out more. You will, I think.
So let me ask you this then. What do you think your duty is as a pastor to guide people towards the right way in terms of opening their minds to be open to different cultures and personalities?
Okay, cultures and personalities. Well, one, I think that getting my my flock into, the people that are part of my congregation, to not allow them to be too cliquish, but to be involved with other things is a good thing. And to promote them to go out and share the gospel, but also just be with other people and show love and be helpful to the people around them. I can't remember what founding father said this, but one of the founding fathers of our country said, good Christians make good citizens. We should be good citizens. We should be neighborly. We should be sending people to, well, good. One of my church members just got back from the Bahamas, and we should be having people doing that kind of thing and helping out as much as we can. So that's what I and then the direction also is teaching the kids and the adults facts well enough that they're capable of saying, no, I disagree with that, and this is why. And that's not easy to do, but if you do it, you're able to not be scared to talk to people you disagree with.
Like that. So let's get into your podcast. We haven't even talked about your podcast yet. Let everybody know what your podcast is about.
Okay, well, what happened with this podcast is this. The guy that I do this podcast, I'm half. The other one, this guy's name is Sinclair. Sinclair is he's in his 70s, and he was a politician. He was on the radio for a little while, and somehow someone told him to come to me and ask me to do a podcast with him. And that's how this whole thing started. I'm not 100% sure he knows that the podcast is not going to a town called Podville. He still seems to think that. And sometimes he'll be like, "Oh, you people in Podville." I'm like, "No, oh, okay, right, okay." But it's been it's he and I. He understands politics better than a lot of people because he's been a politician. He has a lot of insights on those kind of things because he's that age. He has seen things that you and I have not seen because he's considerably older than us. He is, and so what I try to do is tap into some of his knowledge and get it into good recording. We're still learning and having fun with it, and it's been there's been times where it's been just a venting, and but so that's what we do. We just try to talk about some of the events and get a person who has seen a lot's view of it, and that's what I try to do with that podcast, and it's been fun. And also, I mean, as a pastor, I have views, and so I express them also. And as an American, I have views. Well, I express them.
I'm glad you brought that American part. So, what do you think of the climate of America today? That laugh says it all.
I think it's. We were talking about the Bible being a great movie. Right now is a great movie. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, the way things are going every day, the news is. If I wasn't upset about it because some of it is just so and dramatic and traumatizing, it's just a great comedy. I mean, we have a president who I agree with a lot of things he does, but he's also probably the greatest troller of all times. We have Congress and some that hate him so vehemently that they will say things that they're not totally sure about, and then you have others that are by the way, that are Republican and that are Democrat that hate him. I mean, we have gotten In times past there was class systems with rich and poor. I think right now what we're having more and more of is a class system of ruling and non-ruled. And I think the government has had issues, and is the issues are coming out. I think and so we're just watching this crazy movie go on. It's absolutely insane. I don't know if there's good outcomes or bad outcomes at this point. I do not know. I know this is going to go totally against your system, but can I ask you a question?
Of course you can.
All right, I got a question. This has been brewing in my mind. Okay.
Okay.
There's some people that have been saying of late, there's a recession coming. There's a recession coming, and they may be right, they may be wrong, but if they say it over and over again, they may cause a recession.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And so we have gotten into a system where people have created things by saying things. Now, the reason why you and I got connected was because I listened to a podcast of yours that someone was saying something that it was someone that was very upset, and he was expressing it, and you did when I listened to the whole podcast, you did a great job, and he cooled off. But he was expressing anger towards a group of people. And when we say, well, I'm going to try to make it as vague because then we can apply it in as many ways. When we say we are divided, are we making ourselves more divided? Does that make sense? Like not just politically, but racially, belief system. And everyone's saying it so much. We're creating it by saying it. And I don't know how we're going to be able to stop it. But I want to be honest. As I said, I want to say the truth. But are we creating an issue by saying there's an issue?
I think that plays a part into it. I think when you keep constantly saying it, you start to believe it. I also think that I think the divide with us shouldn't be with the people.
Yeah.
Well, we should always be united, because at the end of the day, and this is how I always feel, the government is supposed to be working for us. We're not supposed to be working for the government.
I agree with you full-heartedly. I think we're past that to a degree in some areas.
I agree with that completely.
I'll tell you a story about myself that kind of explains another reason why I'm political in some of my thoughts.
Okay.
I own my own business. As I said, I do construction, and it was 2006, 2007. The IRS went after me, and they said I did something wrong in 2000. No, it was 2004, or it was, I can't remember what year, but it was right on the verge of past the date where they could compel me to pay for it. And I went to the IRS office, and they said, okay, you sign this paper, you sign that paper, you pay this. It was a chunk of change, and everything will be taken care of. Everything will be good. You're going to get some letters in the mail, but don't worry about it. It'll be all taken care of. They said it'll take 3 months for the whole thing to go through, so don't sweat anything you get in the mail until then. Well, it's 2 months later, they took all the money out of all my accounts and froze everything. And I suddenly realized I had no power. I had no power against the government. I am a person that is not scared of anything or anyone, but I was scared. I really was spooked. I mean, every check that I had written and I didn't know, all of them bounced. My credit card stopped working the same day. My phone stopped working the same day. Everything stopped. And it took 2 years and $8,000 paying a CPA to get them to say, oh yeah, we made a mistake, and got part of my money back. And the realization that they have power over me that I do not have over them. And I don't like that. I don't like that feeling, and that has stuck with me ever since. Plus, they remind me of that every couple of years. They told me the year afterwards, they said, we know you're cheating because you couldn't survive on little as money as you paid yourself. And I said, but that's because you took all my money.
Wow.
And so it's turned into an issue. But that's one of the reasons why I think the government has too much control, too much power.
I agree. And I think with our society, we've kind of given it to them.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And we keep on doing it because we keep on saying, well, I'll give them for lack of better terms, my rights and my ability to say no, because they say they're going to take care of me. Because every time we say take care of me, they take a little bit of our ability to take care of ourselves, and it's not a good thing.
It's crazy that you say that, because that's what black people have been arguing about for the longest of time.
Yeah, I bet it.
It's because we constantly say to African Americans that why should we trust them, because they don't do nothing for us. And when it comes down to it, we get treated like crap. But we constantly want to give them our power, more power over us.
And the funny thing is, if you study your history, it wasn't too long after slavery ended that the African American, the black people, were doing extremely well.
Yes,
they're not weak. They are, they don't need the government, and so what we need to do is get the government away from them, because there's so many people that can do so many things, and so it's not just black or white or I was talking to a friend of mine today who is married to a native Indian. I never thought about this, but the native Indians, because of wrongdoings in times past, are getting benefits from the government, pretty much unlike any other group in the United States. And he said, "You want to see what happens when the government gives everything to you? Look at my family." He's like, "My son is 35 and he's never had a job. He has no purpose. He has nothing." And he's like, I can't get him to do anything. He's like, that's what happens when people give up all their rights and give up all their responsibilities. And that's sad.
Yeah, I think that is sad. That I think everybody needs a purpose.
Yes.
And a duty in life to do things. And a lot of times we kind of say, yeah, I want to sit back and retire, but we want to sit back and relax. But do you really want to sit back and do nothing all day?
No, I love, right now it's some of the happiest moments of my life in the last couple of years, partly because, kids and such, but I'm busier than I've ever been. But I like being busy. I like to have a purpose. I believe one of the greatest things about being a Christian is that I have a purpose. I know God, and God says, "Hey, Greg, I want to use you." Oh, thank you. No, I love that. Thank you. I want to be used by you, Lord. That hunger in me, and that gives me a smile every day. It's just it's such a great thing.
I agree. I think it's nothing like finding your calling,
mm-hmm.
and not only going for it, but feeling like that sense of accomplishment with it.
Yeah. It's also amazing watching anyone do what they're made to do. It's so much fun, an athlete or a preacher or one of the illustrations that pops in my mind. I'm friends with a cop, and he was showing me some of his things that are on his belt, because I always go, man, that belt's got to be heavy. And he was pulling things out and flipping them and just like, and I'm like, oh, that's what he was made to do. I just figured that out, and accountants. I mean, I don't want to deal with all those numbers, and they get all excited about numbers. It's so neat that people have a thing that they're made to do, and when we take that away from people, do you know that it was the UK. They did a survey of millennials, and it was in the last 10 years, the amount of people that say they have no purpose in life has, I think it was doubled or tripled. When you have a group of people that have no purpose, that's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Definitely. I agree with that 100%. Like, you need that purpose in your life, and you need something to keep you driving, keep you moving, keep you focused and motivated, because when you don't have that, it just takes a completely different toll on you. Your mind starts wandering. Then essentially you get in trouble.
Yeah, I would. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that's why when in generations in past, when people, when men stuck with their wives and people stuck with their kids, which is becoming less of a thing to a degree. When a man heard his wife say, "I'm pregnant," it was the purpose that gave him the zeal to do great things. I mean, someone says that's the most motivating word someone can ever hear. I'm pregnant. You know what I'm saying? And it creates this thing where people have done everything else because of that, because they're like, well, I got to make this world better for my kids. I got to make enough money to provide for my family. And with both husbands and wives, but and especially I think with men, we need a purpose. And I think it's sad that it lacks in this world today.
I agree. It's been great having you on, Greg, man. This has been a great conversation, man. You got to come back on the podcast sometime.
I would love to. I'd love to. I have enjoyed listening to your podcast. It's been good. So, yeah, thank you very much. And y'all have a great day.
Definitely, man. And let them know where to find your stuff at.
Okay, well, I'm Pilate Said right across the board. I'm Pilate Said at Gmail for email. I'm Pilate Said on, let's see, on Twitter, Facebook, Minds, Parler. I tried to get them all. Let's see. I think I'm on Reddit. I'm Pilate Said all across the board, and my favorite one though is Twitter, yeah. So those are the places you can find me.
And the podcast is
Pilate Said Podcast. You can find us on iTunes. I'm trying to think of all the other ones. I think Spotify, I think Stitcher, I think I'm on Podbean. It's funny, you'll Google your name and you'll find out you're on ones you didn't even know you tried to be on. So I should be on most of them. Okay, that's awesome. So you guys know where to find it. Check him out. He's a good dude. Yeah. As always, Delvin Cox Experience, we are out. Peace.